Hi everybody, my name is Ross Stratton. Today we're going to walk through how to set up a DeckLink Duo 2 card in ProPresenter. So let's jump right into it. First thing we're going to do is make sure that we have desktop video setup installed from Blackmagic. It should look like this once you get it installed. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to walk through how this actually works. The DeckLink Duo card originally had 4 outputs and 2 engines. The DeckLink Duo 2 adds some more functionality to that. And so a lot of the things you're going to see are results of the DeckLink Duo card existing and then the DeckLink Duo card being released, so that it could be a hot swap from the old DeckLink Duo cards. That's why some of the stuff is confusing. And we'll get into that and we'll kind of explain it how it would go. But the first thing we're going to do here is we're going to look at, we actually have 2 engines. That's why I call it DeckLink Duo. It has 2 engines. The first 2 engines, which are DeckLink Duo 1 and DeckLink Duo 2, are the main engines. 3 and 4 are what was added with a DeckLink Duo 2 card, which allows you to actually run somewhat 4 engines with not full compatibility with like key and fill-ins things, but you actually have 4 outputs or 4 inputs or any combination of those in between. So we're going to go and open up the settings panel for DeckLink Duo 1 and kind of see what it's set to. So I'm going to ignore these first couple of things. I'm going to go to connectors. I'm going to show you that connectors 1 and 2, which is your actually SDI 1 and 2 on the back of the card, is DeckLink Duo 1. And if we look at DeckLink Duo 2, it actually will be connectors 3, 4. So this is all the old card would have had, was these 2 things. This would not have existed. But what we can do with this new card is we can actually set this to only be SDI 1. And what that allows it to do is now DeckLink 3 has port 2, which is a 3rd engine, essentially, but it only has the ability to output to 1 SDI. It cannot do key fill, and we'll get into that later. So I'm going to go ahead and set these that same way. So DeckLink Duo 2 will actually be just SDI 3, which will allow our SDI 4 to exist. And so this kind of can be confusing because it's labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, but really it's port 1, port 3, port 2, and port 4. And so we don't get confused, I'm going to go ahead and label those that. So I'm going to actually say like SDI 1, which is connector 1, so it's actually SDI 1. So that makes sense. DeckLink Duo 2 is actually SDI 3, so I'm going to go ahead and label that as SDI 3, which will start to kind of make sense here in ProPresenter in a second. And notice we have ProPresenter off right now because we actually want to configure all this before we open ProPresenter so everything makes sense when we go to set it up. So DeckLink Duo 3 actually is SDI 2 on the back of the card, so we're going to say SDI 2 in our label, which we'll label it 1, 3, 2, and now 4, which actually is the port 4, so we'll call it SDI 4. And so that makes complete sense over here. Everything looks good there. And so if we go ahead and open up ProPresenter, which we'll do now, you'll see here on our multi-view I have those 4 inputs coming in. And I'm going to go and put this slide up here. Just a random slide here. I'm going to go ahead and set up our screens here in screen setup, which is screens, configure screens. We have our screen 1. I'm going to go ahead and set that to SDI 1. And you'll actually see that comes out right on SDI 1, which is great. Our next thing we're going to do is SDI 2, which, remember, will come out through 2 on our multi-view, but remember that that actually is our DeckLink 3 in our actual engine here, so it's, you know. Anyways, so we'll go back and we'll keep adding them. So the SDI 3 comes on 3, super clean, and SDI 4. So this is the basic output of how you actually would do use your DeckLink for outputs. So let's just say that screen 1 is your house projectors. So great. This is our stage display. So we actually don't want it to be an audience. We want it down here. So I'm going to delete all these. Oh, see, we messed that up already. So let's just do house projectors. And let's make that SDI 1. That's our first SDI port. So we see that come up in our multi-view. And I want our second one to be a stage display. So we'll notice that it comes up as stage display. And maybe we want to do an audience output, like an announcement output in ProPresenter. So we'll label that as 3, great, and we'll call that announce. And since I can't spell announcement, we'll put announce. And maybe a 4th output for stage display, which can be a totally different thing, which, let's see, what's the best thing we could put on this screen? But anyways, for now, let's actually look at our output, see if we can see it. Let's clear everything. And I want to see what our identified screens are. And you'll see that it's SDI 1, 2, 3, 4 on your DeckLink, all lined up, and then our outputs are actually showing us what they are. That matters more when you have more confusing things. That helps you kind of identify what's going on. That kind of shows you what outputs go to what. So there's their basic setup. So now I'm going to remove all these, because I'm actually going to get into the next thing, which is how do you do key and fill with a Blackmagic switcher. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make a new thing, new placeholder, and we'll just go ahead and delete this. So now we're not using our DeckLink at all, just so we can have a fresh start when we actually reopen up ProPresenter after we change some things. So this is how we're gonna go ahead and now move on to setting up key and fill for a switcher, like a Blackmagic ATEM switcher with 2 SDI outputs to do overlay over video. And so let's go ahead and turn off ProPresenter. Let's quit that. And the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up SDI1, and we're going to set it to SDI1 2, which is going to use both ports. And we'll go ahead and label that now SDI1 2. But notice what happens to port 2, SDI2, which is engine 3. It has no connectors anymore. So we can't do 2 because it's being used by engine 1. So we're going to go ahead and say not used, so we don't end up using that by accident because it's not supposed to be used. So we have 1, 2, 3, and 4, and those are the ports. So now we're going to go ahead and open up ProPresenter again. And we're going to go ahead and put something on the screen. Go to our screens here. And let's go ahead and set this output to 1, 2. And now you'll see a new thing pops up over here called alpha key. And we want to go ahead and enable that. And we're going to say external key because we want a key on the switcher. We want to externally key it out of ProPresenter. And so what will happen is you'll notice over on multi-view, let me switch to that, is that you'll see 2 things on SDI 1 and 2 that look similar, but one's a little bit more weird, doesn't look quite right. Let me show a slide that actually would make more sense with this. So I have this slide right here which has a blue background and white text. And you'll notice what happens is that the SDI1 is just this, it's always white or black or gray. It never is color. And what that does is it shows us what to key out. It tells the switcher what to key out. That's called the key. And so I'm actually going to edit this slide here to actually show more about that. So I'm going to add a shape, another blue shape, which is fine. And we'll go ahead and just make it the whole background. I'm going to go ahead and just do that. Make it that. Great, great, great. And I'm actually going to make it a gradient. I'm going to go ahead and put the text on top of that so we can see the text. I'm going to remove the old rectangle. And this gradient looks cool, great, awesome, happy for us. But I want to set it to actually be transparent. And so I'm going to open up the dialog box here and let's see the opacity here. I'm going to do this. And so what that's going to do, and you'll see it right here, you'll see the checkerboard pattern. That tells us what's transparent and what's not. You can see that, you can see. So if we look now, when I click this, this is the best representation of what key and fill looks like. So we have a grayscale version, which is the key, and what is black is transparent, what is white is fully non-transparent, which I guess would be not transparent, I don't know. So what's white is not transparent, and what is black or gray is a percentage of what is transparent. This doesn't really do us a whole lot of good here. What am I going to do with this on a switcher? So we're going to go ahead and, right now we have this output. We're going to go ahead and switch over to our ATEM control software. And we're going to go ahead and go to our downstream key here, which is what we use. You can use upstream key, whatever, depending on what you want to do. And we're actually going to set our fill source as 2, which is the one that looks normal, with the fill. It's what actually is being used, what you're actually going to see. And then the key source is what the switcher is going to use to know what to be transparent, what's not. So that's SDI1. So you'll see 2 and 1. And then I'm going to go ahead and turn on downstream key 1. And you'll notice on the switcher, the color bars are seen where black is on that, and it fades into blue because it has key and fill. It has data to do that. And so now our DeckLink Duo is being used to send 2 outputs, one to key and one to fill for the switcher. And so that still leaves us with 2 more outputs. So that allows us to maybe set up, like we did before, a stage display on 3, which we'll see there, and maybe another audience output, which would be the house screens, which is consistent. Another fill, which can be used to do other things like, I'll get into that. So let's do projectors, and then we'll call this one switcher, and we'll call this stage. So what we can do with this, and you'll notice what's happening here on the switch on the multi-view here. What we can do with this, we can actually change our looks and actually change how certain things look. So maybe I will do on our switcher, I want this to be a certain template, which is this. And you'll notice that it outputs something different than what our SDI4 is, which would be our house projectors. So that would allow us to do lower thirds. Let me actually see if I can find something. I actually made something here like a lower third. And you'll see what it does. It puts it down at the bottom there. But if we go to like the slides without that weird transparency, that's what it looks like. But we still have SDI4 if you look, which can go to the screens. Awesome. We have our key and our fill. And so that's pretty much how to set up a DeckLink Duo with ProPresenter 7. A DeckLink Quad 2 is the exact same thing as this, except for we have 8 outputs, which you can start to do some crazy cool stuff. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm actually going to unplug SDI4. And you'll see that go away here in a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to feed something into it instead of it being an output. So we got an input in now. And what we're going to do with that is we'll actually see that we're going to be receiving an input here in a second. And I'm actually going to delete anything that isn't with 4 on it, because we want to actually use it as an input. And we'll be able to actually go to ProPresenter and go to our video inputs. And we actually should be able to use 4 as an input. And you'll notice that's actually our switcher's multi-view will actually show that. And when I put this up and I go back to this, you're actually seeing the input coming in. And so in a typical setup where like we're doing a small church where we're trying to do this stuff and actually stream out of ProPresenter and all that, let me actually show you how to set up the ability to use your DeckLink Duo 2 to do key and fill, a stage display, and then also stream your switcher's input or your output, your program output. And so this is pretty much it. What we're going to do is we're actually going to set up some screens. So some virtual screens. So as the switcher gets this, which is pretty typical. We have a stage display, which is 3, which I already have set up. Now we're actually going to make a new stage display, which is just a placeholder. And we'll call this stream. And so we have a stage display called stream, and it's just a placeholder. It has no physical I/O. And what we're going to do is we're going to go in to edit our stage layout. And what we can do with this is let's just we have a blank layout, it looks like. And it looks like I've done this before, so let me go delete that. Let me make a new one. So I'm going to make a new layout, which is a blank layout. And I'm going to make a new box, which just has a shape, rectangle. And I'm gonna align it to 0, 0. This is just trying to make it nice and clean. 1920 by 1080, which is the resolution of this thing. And I'm actually gonna fill it with our video input. And our video input is going to be video input 1, which we set up earlier to be SDI4. And so what that allows us to do, if we go back to this, is actually see what our stream looks like. Which, that's not right, because we didn't set it. Let me set it real quick. Stream is the blank layout one. And that is going to be our input for streaming. We actually can stream this output. Switcher is just sending out what we're sending out, and stage display is what you think it is. So this is actually from the ATEM coming in. And so the next thing we need to do is set up how do we do audio. And you'll probably see me have some residual things from me doing it in the past, but I'm going to go ahead and try to reset it for you so you can kind of get the idea of how we would bring audio in, because we want to still be able to play videos in here and play it to our sound system, but then we want just the audio that gets streamed to come from the switcher. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to change our channel count in ProPresenter to 4. And that's going to make it so that our videos we play back in here will still play audio out, which actually I think we can maybe, yeah, so you'll see we're playing that out. And so that comes out on 1 and 2. And then we have 3 and 4 aren't being used. So what we're going to do with that is we're going to go back to our inputs in ProPresenter. And we have audio coming in from 4, which is embedded. So we're getting that. So if I was to say have audio from the, let me get a wireless mic here. So this is from a microphone here. We'll go back to ProPresenter and you'll see that's coming in on 1 and 2, which we don't want. We want 1 and 2 of the video switcher to come in on 3, 4. And what that should allow us to do is we actually see 3, 4 coming through, but it's not playing on my speakers, but this can still play, and my microphone can still come through. And what we're going to do, the last step, is go to our live capture settings, and we can actually set our audio routing for it to stream 3, 4. So when we go to stream, we're going to stream the source stream, which is this video, and it's going to grab the audio from 3, 4, but then we can still output out of ProPresenter separately, and it won't be affected. And we'll notice whenever we clear everything, our switcher, our stream is still coming through. So anything we do on our switcher program, which let's make this smaller so you can actually see it. When I change it to black, it goes black. When we go bars, there's nothing you can do to turn that off, and the audio is always coming through. And that would allow us to stream right to YouTube or Facebook or anything that you prefer to use with the audio too. So anyways, this has been the tutorial on how to set up DeckLink on ProPresenter 7. I might do a follow-up if anyone has any questions on anything in detail of how we did this. But this is typically how we set up a lot of our clients' ProPresenter for people who only have one computer and want to do lower thirds and maybe a stage display, and they're just going to display whatever they have on their thing, or the stage display cannot be used and just do house projectors, which by just going to screens, and we won't have a stage display, we'll just have an output that is for the projector or whatever. So we have SDI1, 2 is used for key and fill, and then 3 is used for the projectors in the room, and then 4 is our input for ProPresenter to stream. So yeah, that's how you set up a DeckLink 2 in ProPresenter 7. I know there's a ton of other ways you could do this. You really could just overlay your lower third directly in ProPresenter and not have to do key and fill out into a switcher, which gives you the ability to have 2 more outputs on your DeckLink Duo, which is totally a possibility. But this just goes to show you that you can actually have internal key and fill for like lobby TVs, so you can do video live in the lobby with lower thirds and all that. But maybe we'll talk about how to actually do lower thirds without a DeckLink Duo where you're just importing video into ProPresenter 7 and then overlaying a second screen and streaming that out of a switcher without key and fill. But anyways, yeah, thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye.